Public consultation on the government's voluntary health insurance scheme. Police clear out the Causeway Bay Occupy site. And a developing hostage crisis in Sydney.
Good evening. The government has launched a public consultation for its voluntary health insurance scheme. It says policyholders can be eligible for tax deductions, but admitted there may be more incentives for the middle class than people in a lower income bracket. Stephanie Choi reports.
The average standard premium of the government's voluntary health insurance scheme will cost $3,600 per year, as calculated in 2012 constant prices. That's 9% higher than other individual hospital insurance products on the market. The government scheme will cover hospitalization fees, attending physicians' visit fees, and surgical fees capped at $58,000. The scheme will also cover advanced diagnostic imaging tests such as MRI, non-surgical cancer treatment including chemotherapy, and endoscopies, among other day-based procedures.
The voluntary health insurance scheme can help relieve pressure on the public system, and users of public healthcare services can benefit from shorter waiting time and enhanced service quality, thereby contributing to the long-term sustainability of our healthcare system.
The government has proposed to offer tax deductions to policyholders of the new scheme. For example, a 30-year-old policyholder paying an annual premium of $2,200 with a tax band of 17% would have a tax deduction of $374. Another person of the same age paying the same premium but with a tax band of 2% would have a tax deduction of only $44.
With suitable adaptation,
while the health chief admitted that the tax deduction may not be attractive to some, he pointed out since the scheme targets middle-class taxpayers, it will have a certain appeal. The government estimates more than 200,000 people will join the scheme, which is expected to launch in 2016. At the same time, the government is also launching its consultation on the regulation of private healthcare facilities, which include those providing high-risk medical procedures and facilities under medical organizations. Such facilities will be required to publish historical statistics on common procedures and provide a written quotation to patients before they receive treatment. Facilities that go against these regulations may be fined up to $1 million and $10,000 for each day they continue breaking regulations. Stephanie Choi, TVB News.
Well, police today cleared out the occupied site at Causeway Bay. It was the last of several protest encampments on public roads to be cleared since the Occupy movement began 79 days ago. 17 people refused to leave and were arrested for obstructing police officers in the execution of their duties. War Street was fully reopened to traffic shortly after 1 p.m. And outside the Legislative Council building in Admiralty, most protesters left on their own at the request of Legco staff. We have this report from Rani Samtani.
Police swooped in on War Street this morning and cleared out the last remaining Occupy protest site. Officers arrived at the scene at 9:30 a.m. and repeatedly urged occupiers to leave.
You have 20 minutes to take away your belongings. Please leave immediately in an orderly manner.
After police cordoned off the area, the special tactical team moved in at around 10:20. They cut through the chains and plastic cords that bound all the barriers and moved the obstacles out of the way. Chainsaws were used to tear down a large wooden board. Outside the cordon line, Occupy supporters gathered. It took over an hour to clear the roads of barricades. Police removed all tents and obstacles that were blocking the road and pushed them to the side. Soon after, several trucks were brought in to take the rubbish away. Cleaners swept the streets and removed all posters and stickers from the road. An identification zone was set up at the junction of War Street and Patterson Street. Protesters who voluntarily left the occupied site after it was cordoned off had to register their personal details with officers. Independent Police Complaints Council members observed the clearance operation.
I can see that the arrangement made by the police has been very professional and orderly, and it is conducive to a very peaceful clearance action.
More than a dozen demonstrators refused to leave. They gathered together waiting to be arrested.
I'm willing to be arrested. I'm not really worried about that, yes, because I'm fulfilling the responsibility of the civil disobedience.
Lawmakers Kenneth Chan and Fernando Zheng came to support the remaining few protesters. Zheng left before the arrests began.
We've been here for more than 78 days. We're here today to face the ultimate clearance by the police. But even though the police may clear us out, but we have very strong determination to come back.
Police issued a final warning asking protesters to leave Yiwa Street in the direction towards Patterson Street. But the occupiers remained defiant. Officers then arrested the demonstrators one by one, taking them to a bus nearby. The roads were reopened to traffic just after 1 p.m. Bus and tram services in the area then returned to normal. Over at the Legislative Council, protesters were cleared from the demonstration area outside the building. LegCo security staff took action at about 2 p.m. They called on occupiers to leave the LegCo Plaza and demonstration area. Protesters were given 1 hour to pack up and leave on their own.
You must leave now. Otherwise, our security staff will assist you to leave. If you do not cooperate with us, we may seek assistance from the police.
Most of the protesters left voluntarily. Some moved their tents and other supplies to the sidewalk of Tim May Avenue outside the LegCo complex. A few people who refused to leave were eventually escorted away by LegCo security staff. After all the demonstrators were gone, staff began clearing up the demonstration area, removing rubbish and posters on the pillars. Ronnie Samtani, TVB News.
In the wake of the Occupy movement, the chief executive said it is now time for Hong Kong people to reflect on how the SAR should pursue democracy. He also added that the biggest loss the SAR suffered during the past 2.5 months is the undermining of the city's rule of law. As Evelina Leung reports, the police say more than 900 people have been arrested so far, and the possibility of more arrests is not ruled out.
Today, the chief executive had some strong words for the Occupy protesters. Leung Chun-ying said over the past 2.5 months, a small number of people had committed acts that undermined the city's rule of law. He said how others view the city following such actions is Hong Kong's biggest loss. The CE said Hong Kong, like all democratic countries in the world, has to be realistic and implement democracy in a lawful manner. This means the implementation of universal suffrage in the SAR has to comply with the decisions of the National People's Congress Standing Committee and the Basic Law, the CE added. The Commissioner of Police also held a press conference today to talk about the Occupy protests. When asked about the minimum force that the police insisted they have been exercising, this is what Andy Zheng had to say.
It's not about minimum force per se, it's about minimum force necessary. And that is why what is necessary will very much depend on the circumstances. For instance, if the protester was simply pushing against you, then the level of force that one would use would probably be relatively low. And whereas if you're talking about protesters who use spiked shield to charge against you, you would expect the level of force to be higher.
Zheng added that 955 people have been arrested in relation to the Occupy movement, and the police hope to complete their investigations within 3 months' time. He is not ruling out the possibility of more arrests during the investigations. The police chief added that to ensure protesters won't reoccupy the roads, the force will strengthen deployment in various districts in the following couple of days. Evelina Lang, TVB News.
Turning overseas now, the centre of Australia's biggest city remains on lockdown this hour after an armed man walked into a cafe this morning and took hostages. Sydney police say it appears no one has been hurt, but it's not yet clear how exactly many people are being held or what the gunman wants. James Aiken with the latest.
The first development came 6 hours after the hostage crisis began. 3 men were seen running from a fire exit of the downtown cafe. Shortly afterwards, 2 women, apparently employees of the shop, ran out of the cafe towards waiting police. It's not clear if the hostages were released or escaped. Police aren't discussing what the hostage taker wants or how demands are being made, but they are monitoring social media for any information that might assist them.
Our only goal tonight, and for as long as this takes, is to get those people that are currently caught in that building out of there safely. That remains our #1 priority, and nothing will change.
A delivery driver with his identity concealed says he saw the gunman.
He was quite tall, probably late 40s, had a long white sleeve shirt on with a black vest. He was very calm. He was just pacing.
Earlier, several people inside the cafe were seen with their arms in the air and hands pressed against the windows. A black flag with the Islamic Declaration of Faith was held up. Social media posts by alleged hostages claimed the gunman wanted to speak directly with Prime Minister Tony Abbott, who suggested the incident is politically motivated.
This is a very disturbing incident. It is profoundly shocking that innocent people should be held hostage by an armed person claiming political motivation. Yes, it has been a difficult day. Yes, it is a day which has tested us, but so far, like Australians in all sorts of situations, we have risen to the challenge.
So far, it appears the incident, which has sent fear rippling across Australia, is not part of a larger coordinated attack. But with no end to the siege in sight, Sydney remains on edge as terrified hostages prepare for what could be a very long night. James Aiken, TVB News.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said today that his coalition's resounding win in yesterday's general election gives him the mandate to maintain Japan's ambitious economic policies. But a low voter turnout pointed to a general dissatisfaction and cast doubt about whether people believe in his so-called Abenomics. Fresh from his election win over the weekend, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe projected confidence that he had a clear mandate to lead the country and continue his ambitious economic agenda. He brushed aside suggestions that a low turnout tarnished his coalition's election win. Today, Abe vowed to stick to his reflationary economic policies, tackle painful structural reforms, and maintain a stronger security stance. Abe didn't talk about his foreign policy plans, but analysts expect that his enthusiasm for Japan projecting a stronger image abroad will continue.
He didn't talk about foreign policy. He didn't talk about constitutional revision. But this is Mr. Shinzo Abe, who sees his role as moving Japan towards constitutional revision and of raising Japan's profile in the world.
The LDP and its junior partner, the Komeito Party, won 326 seats in yesterday's election to maintain a two-thirds supermajority in the lower house, which smooths parliamentary business. The LDP itself didn't win as many seats this time round, though, slipping slightly to 291 from 295. But the low turnout suggests that many Japanese citizens seem unconvinced by the merits of Abenomics. Turnout was an estimated record low of 53.3%, well below the 59.3% in a 2012 poll that returned Abe to power. Abe also promised that he would knuckle down on implementing the third arrow of his Abenomics strategy, and this would include economic reforms in politically sensitive areas such as the highly protected farm sector, although he did not mention labour market deregulation, which many economists believe must also be addressed. Given Japan slipped back into recession in the third quarter this year, Abe knows he has his work cut out for him to show his strategy is the right one for Japan.
And still to come in our newscast, data security concern involving Android smartphones. The jury retires to deliberate verdict in trial.